Hey everybody, welcome back to A Brief on Grief. Um, Today I want to talk a little bit more about the emotions of shame and guilt, and shame versus guilt. Now, as we all know that grief, the emotions and the experiences of grief are varied, right? It's not just not expressed as sadness, but grief, sadness, fear, shame, guilt, irritability, exhaustion, overwhelm, so many different emotions can be involved in our grieving process. And like always, I'm getting inspiration from my own life in different experiences of guilt versus shame lately. I've been as you've seen from some of the latest videos, the last couple last couple ones, is that I've been doing things. I've been shaking things up a lot the last several months or the last several weeks, doing things differently, speaking differently, choosing different things, different ways of being and saying in relationships, choosing to step away from certain relationships, choosing to just do things differently. And it's shaking up a lot. And yeah, so I'm still, and there's of course emotions that are involved in that. I realized a few days ago I was in a place of shame. Today, what is springing the creation of this video is, again, like I feel the difference of certain things, feeling in a place, realizing guilt and a feeling of an emotion of guilt that I feel today, and how that feels very differently in my body than I felt a few days ago when the emotion felt more like shame. And of course, I've mentioned shame, and I've done videos, thanking Brene Brown for her work in this powerful topic. It's very different, right? She outlines that shame is a feeling of I am bad, where guilt is a feeling that I did something or acted badly, in a way that I regret. So the guilt is focused on your behavior. Shame is directly at you as a person, right? So when you feel shame, you feel like you want to hide, you want to isolate, you want to put your head in the sand because you feel like there's something inadequate about yourself, right? Something you did, something you said, something you didn't say or didn't do. You feel inadequate. It makes you inadequate, unworthy of love. Guilt, very differently, right? It's focused on the behavior. So, and I'm noticing today, as I experience an emotion of guilt around something, that it feels so differently in my body. I took that out to nature because that's where I take all my emotions and different things to process and work things and ground and stuff. And I'm realizing, yes, how it feels very different, and how in discussions that I've had recently, today, yesterday, with friends and loved ones that were difficult, right? And I realized these situations, these conversations that I had with loved ones recently would have been situations in the past which would have caused me shame, right? I stepped back from conversations that were maybe emotional and thought, and I realized I was in an energy where I was like, okay, yes, I'm glad I spoke that. I'm glad I spoke my truth about that. I'm glad I was able to share that. I'm glad I was able to hear, what my friend or the person I was speaking to was saying. But then also realizing, but maybe I could have done it this way, or I could have tried this way, and then maybe it wouldn't have been, because, there was emotion shared back and forth. And so it was in a reflective kind of space of, okay, I could have done this like this, or maybe this is the way I responded in a way was just like, I want to respond differently. And that's what I can do for the future. But instead of like an energy of shame where you're beating up on yourself, right? Like, I should have done it this way and I shouldn't have said that. And I'm a bad person because this happened. No, it was more like stepping back, seeing the role that I played in the interaction, seeing how maybe when things went off in the interaction, where no, it wasn't about blaming the other person. They should have done this, they should have done that. So the shame and exterior projection of shame, but more of like, I see where they were, I see where I am. I could have done, if they did it this way, it might have made a difference. If I did it this way, it might have made a difference. But really just sharing, seeing both roles and seeing that, yeah, that's against maybe the way I want to be, maybe against my values of the way I want to communicate, but to not shit on myself, basically. Shame, shit. To not shit on myself for it, to be like, hey, okay, I can choose, I can do something differently in the future. I can feel guilty because this is against maybe something that I value about who I want to show up as and how I want to love people that I care about, but without that energy that cuts us down, that shame energy. When I was out walking, I realized, because from, you should, I don't know if any of you, if you know anything about shame, you'll know the word should, right? Should is always like a red flag that you're shaming yourself, or you're in an energy of shame, right? Messages at yourself or at somebody else. You should have said this, you shouldn't have said this, you should have done this, blah, 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 blah. That's an energy of shame, right? I realized when I was out walking that the energy of guilt is very different. It feels different. Like I still feeling like a different kind of whirling energy in me instead of an energy of wanting to stick my head in the sand. Very different. But that energy, and I was like, guilt, yeah. Shame is about shoulds. Shame is about shutdown. It's a shutdown energy. But guilt is about growth, right? It's about, instead of I should have done it, it's like I could do it this way. I could have done it this way, and I have a choice for the future of how I want to do it. So guilt is about growth. So the GG and the and the should and shame and shutdown. And that's huge. That is so huge that we need to stop shoulding on ourselves and could on ourselves instead. I could do this, because a could is an action of taking responsibility in the present for how something went out. And yeah, I could have done this, and looking at the different options of how I could have behaved differently. Not the should have behaved, but the could energy. And that could is creative. That's another, did I say that already? No, could is creative, another C word. Could, guilt is could for the future, creative for the future, right? Growth. I can do something, I can choose to do something differently in the future. And it's a hugely different energy. I can still feel it in my body. And I realize, and that, I mean, after all, that's what's bringing me here to create this video right now, is the energy of this, and realizing that that's a powerful, powerful distinction between these two emotions. Is one, the shame shuts us down. The shame makes us feel horrible about ourselves. And when we feel horrible about ourselves, that does nothing. It does nothing of benefit for ourselves or for the people that we love around us, for the present or in the future, right? Because when we're in a state of pain is when we act out in a way that maybe is against our values, right? When we're in maybe a state of fear or shame or anger, then we act from that wet place. I'm very present with a conversation I had recently that, yeah, I was acting from a place of anger. But instead of shaming myself, I'm going to be like, I feel guilty. I could have processed that anger a little bit more before coming to the conversation. But seeing the could instead of the should is what helps grow. What helps me see growth and growth for the future, and choosing to do something differently next time. So anyway, I could talk forever and ever about this. I have no idea how long we've gone. So yes, could versus should, shame versus guilt. Guilt always leads to growth. Shame, shut down. So if you can feel, honor that you're imperfect, honor that you're on a constant growing process, and that you're always not going to be able to act the way you want. You're always not going to be able to behave and say the right things and act in ways that are in line with your values and morals. But if you learn to forgive yourself when you act against those and realize, hey, yeah, I could have done this, the other person could have done that, but I realize my role in it, and only from that energy can I move forward into a more creative energy of growth, to do better differently, to do better next time. So yeah, okay, I will see you guys next time. Okay, bye.